Welcome to Wheels and Watches DIY. My name is Dennis, and I like to tinker with watches. On a bench today is a special watch. This belonged to my uncle, who has unfortunately passed away fairly recently. So I decided to restore his watch and bring it back to its former glory. The watch that you see is a Swiss Army watch. It's a quartz watch with the chronograph function, date function. On the top left is the minute dial. On the top right is tenth of a second dial, and on the bottom is the second dial. So you could see that we started by opening up the watch and taking the battery out. Unfortunately, the old battery leaked a little bit of acid, so I used white vinegar and a product called nail tea, which is essentially a Q-tip, but it has a really nice fine point to get into the nooks and the crannies. So first I used white vinegar to get the corrosion off, and then I used rubbing alcohol just to neutralize that. So after that, I'm trying to take out a stem here, and it's really tricky because in this case, you have to put the stem into position 1 before you press the release button. So after learning that, I released the stem, took out the movement, and now we're inspecting the case. The case was very, very dirty, and I spent a lot of time cleaning it by hand before throwing all the big parts, with exception, of course, the bezel, into the ultrasonic cleaner. So here you could see I'm using my pegwood. So I start cleaning the watch. I always put plastic, if you notice. I put plastic on the bezel before I pop it off to avoid any damage. So I took the bezel off. I'm cleaning around there. And now I'm taking out the little clip that is holding the pushers in. So I have to push the pusher in and gently release the clip before it flies off into the abyss. I do have to say that I thought I lost one of them because it did pop out with some force, so I thought I lost it forever, but luckily it was just stuck a little bit below the pusher. So here I'm just showing the little C-clips. Each pusher has a little spring and then 2 miniature washers. Now I'm cleaning around the glass. By the way, this is the first time I am working on this kind of a watch. Luckily, I've had some experience with Seiko dive watches before, so the process is very similar. The most important thing I find is having the right tools for the job. So I used my press, I used my special brushes, pegwood, rubbing alcohol, and like I said, vinegar to neutralize the acid. I think from start to finish, the whole project took me maybe a couple of hours. The really tricky part was, one, is releasing the stem, 2, taking the washer from the crown, as well as rebuilding it, and 3, those little C-clips on the chronograph pushers were a bit of a pain. But luckily, everything worked out. I didn't lose any parts, and most importantly, I did not break anything in the process. Here you could see I'm trying to clean as much gunk out of those pushers. Doing this before throwing everything into to an ultrasonic cleaner makes a huge difference. This will make any of the washing solutions and rinsing solutions last a lot longer. And then you just saw me there do a little vacuum with my portable cordless vac, and I'm continuing on with the process. Here you could see me taking out those little washers and just placing them onto the back case lid. In the process of removing those little washers, I broke 2 of them, but fear not, I had a bunch of spare ones in my drawer, so I just took the ones that were in decent shape and I matched up the size with a generic washer. By the way, I've done the same thing when I rebuild the main crown / stem. But we'll get to that in a little bit. You can see me here struggling with taking those washers out. So here you could see me looking at the crown and trying to dig the washer out that way. But unfortunately, I was not successful. So after playing with it for a little bit, I left it behind and moved on to finishing cleaning the case. The bad news is I totally forgot to press the record button when I was rebuilding the crown, so it didn't really work out that way. So here you see me trying to take the crown off from the stem. So first I put it into a pinwise. Then I gently heated the crown with a blowtorch, which softens up the glue that holds everything in place. And then I used my pliers to gently separate the stem from the crown. So here you can see me trying to clean the crown a little bit. But we'll get to the crown rebuild later. I will say this, there's not a lot of posts out there that show you how to take those washers from those crowns just because of how they're positioned. The biggest thing people complain about when they're rebuilding those crowns is that when they try to pry the washer out, they typically damage the washer. So what I did instead, and again, this is not my invention, I read it somewhere on internet and this method actually worked. I used a bunch of gaskets that I had in my spare stash, and I just kept popping them into the crown. And then I had another watch case that actually cleared the outer and the inner portions of the crown. So I would put a new washer in and kept pressing the other watch case into it, creating that extra pressure. So after inserting maybe 15-20 washers, the gasket just naturally popped out, and I was able to remove the gasket, the little washer under the gasket. I was able to take out the little washer, and under the washer was another metal washer. So I was able to clean those parts by hand, throw them into my ultrasonic cleaner, and then fine-tune them afterwards. So here you see me working on the case. It's a very slow and tedious process. There was a lot of build-up gunk everywhere, so it took me quite a bit of time. Here I'm working on the bezel. After popping it off, I cleaned the inside very gently, and then you'll see me in a second. I'll put a little bit of masking tape over the numbers This particular tape is used for when you polish a watch case. I didn't want to damage or put extra wear on the bezel itself. I didn't really polish it with a machine. I use a metal brightener, if you will, to just take some of the oxidation off of the metal and just bring a fresh look to it without taking the patina off, if you know what I'm saying. I did the same thing on the watch case itself. I used a little bit of that product in a special cloth just to get that oxidation off, so the watch case doesn't look as tired as it was before. So it cleaned it up a little bit, but it left all the patina that the watch acquired over the years intact. Okay, so here we are. You see that polishing process there. And I'm just using my hands just because it's more precise. I think at some point I will invest into a polishing machine, but given I'm not really doing a lot of watch cases at the moment, and I don't like really polishing watches, so there's no real need for that machine just yet. But probably down the road I'll pick something up, something decent. So the bezel is done, and you could see that it's definitely in better shape. And now we're back to the case. So now we're gonna use my press to take the crystal out. It's important to select the die that clears the case and doesn't break the watch. Sorry, doesn't break the crystal. I always use a little bit of plastic when I pop out the crystal. I just find it's a little bit better that way, just in case there's anything on the dies or whatever. So here you can see me laying out all the parts here. So we got the watch, the bracelet, the pins, new battery, movement holder, back case seal, the back case lid, pushers, springs, crown, stem that are separated, and little C-clips. And of course the movement at the bottom. So now we can throw the parts into my wash baskets. And I'm gonna use my ultrasonic cleaner off camera to clean all the all the parts of this particular watch. I'm using lighter fluid in case you're wondering. And I find lighter fluid is cheap and effective. It's not the best product out there for this purpose, but it does the job. Since I'm not doing this full time, it does a really good job degreasing and take all the things, all the debris, all the gunk out. And then I do 3 rinses in 99% IPA in my watch cleaning machine in conjunction with an ultrasonic cleaner. The only thing I did not throw into the washing machine was the bezel. I just cleaned it by hand. So I'm loading all the parts. You can see the bracelet. By the way, the machine that I'm using is called ChronoClean. It's basically a mason jar, and then you have some watch baskets that are various sizes. You have little compartments within each basket to accommodate different parts. So I have a bunch of those depending on what kind of parts I need to clean. And then you'll see that little brass ball. The brass ball I use for small parts that I don't want to be lost in the process. So I have the case the back case, the bracelet, and all the big parts, or bigger parts I should say, loaded up. And then I'm gonna clean everything off camera there. After the watch parts have been washed, to dry them, I use a foot dehydrator for that. Some people use a hair dryer, but I find that a dedicated foot dehydrator works just fine. I'm able to lay all the parts out flat and make sure that everything is dried thoroughly. You can control the temperature on my foot dehydrator as well as time, but I find that 10 minutes is more than enough time to clean everything properly. By the way, I did 2 cycles of the cleaning just because everything was really caked on. So here you could see me working on that stainless steel bracelet. Again, it was pretty dirty. I did the best that I could in terms of cleaning all the nooks and the crannies, and it took me a long time to get through it. Besides the brushed nail teeth, I also used the fiberglass pan, and it did a really good job without scratching the surface. Here you could see me using the nail teeth I was talking about earlier. They're super handy. Probably one of the best products out there that I've tried so far. So between my pegwood pen, my fiberglass pen, and the nail teeth, I think you got most of your cleaning jobs covered right there. Obviously you'll need like a little brush or a painter's brush to get into the nooks and crannies, but those 3 products I mentioned before work really, really well. Okay, so here is that crown taken apart. You could see how much gunk is inside. So we cleaned it all out by hand and then threw it into my ultrasonic cleaner. And here we are. This is the finished product, all put back together. The parts that we skipped is how I have taken apart the crown and how I've put it back together. Like I said before, it's because I forgot to press the record button. So I'm hoping that on another project I'm able to video that and just record it and see if it's useful to other people. That's about it. Thanks for watching, and until next time.